A very, very good afternoon to everybody, and it's time for another session at our Live at the Waterhole with our wonderful selection of cameras, thanks to Africam. And we've started out today somewhere where we don't often visit, certainly when I'm around, which is at Kruger Shalati Sunrise within the Kruger National Park itself. As you can see there, my name is Ben Coley. I will be with you for the next 2 hours, and we will see what we will see. But this is a beautiful way to start. One of my favorite birds that we find out here, because we don't see them all too often, and it is hugely impressive to see one. This is the world's largest heron, a Goliath heron, who is busy fishing away in the shallows here. As you can see on the screen, if you are just joining us for the very first time, this is live and interactive for the next 2 hours. So please do send in all your questions, your comments, where you're from, what you're up to, anything you want to know about what we're looking at, or anything to do with the natural world. And as always, I will do my absolute best to come up with hopefully some sensible answers for you. But this heron is likely on the hunt for some fish, although he's moving with a little bit more speed than I would expect. Perhaps no, it looks like he's slowed down. Of course, they are stealth hunters, and they move very, very slowly, striking only occasionally, often dismissing smaller prey and rather going for the bigger food, which gives a little bit more reward for the effort if we are lucky enough to see this guy or girl. There's no dimorphism between the species. Both sexes are identical as far as I know. We'll see that long neck coil up, and then strike down with that long pointed beak, often just stabbing the fish, skewering it, spearing it basically, before taking it to a perch, and devouring it whole, swallowing it, maneuvering it, manipulating it its head first, so the scale grain is correct, and then swallowing it. But sorry, it seems we had some issues at Shalati, so we've zoomed across the country to Madikwe Private Game Reserve to the beautiful vista at Jamala. Right, I see we've got quite a few messages coming through already. Thank you very much. Penelope Kenyon saying hello to everybody, to Nadine, who is in my ear telling me what's happening on the other cameras and no doubt making me chuckle at some point. Saying hello to myself, Nadine, all the Zoomies, everybody watching from a cool, rainy Salt Rock in KZN's north coast. We are in a bit of a cold spell here in South Africa, or at least a cold front. It's quite overcast today. Temperatures down 7 or 8 degrees here in the Lowveld from what they were yesterday, hovering around 26, I think, was the forecast for today. And possibility of a little bit of drizzle. So, what may be the last bit of rain we get before the more stable winter conditions. Okay, looks like the cameras have sorted themselves out. So let's head up to Kenya to Oldonyo, as I'm sure there will be either elephants or giraffe. Let's go have a look. We have some elephants and a giraffe in the background. Very, very common sights to see at Oldonyo. This is the camera that just keeps on giving. Well, I'm not sure if your screen also froze momentarily there, but there was a beautiful, what looked like a citrus swallowtail butterfly or similar that was just captured in mid-flight. Some great unexpected camera work. Let's see who else is joining us today. Ellie saying hello to everybody, myself to Nadine. Fuzzy Dunlop saying happy thirsty Thursday. Well, I hope you have something to quench your thirst. Speaking of which, Giraffe Girl, you have got your first cuppa. I'm actually enjoying a very nice berry smoothie, which has just been made for me, so I'm feeling a little bit more health conscious today. And these elephants are going for some simple water. A little bit of nudging amongst each other, possibly making space for what looks like a slightly older bull who's just come in. Who else do we have? Deb Davis. Good morning to you as well. Glad you could join us. Lady Macbeth, you're going back to the Goliath Heron. And Julian Thomas also saying what a great start it was to see the Goliath Heron. I'm sorry we couldn't stay with it a little bit longer. Lady Macbeth, you saw one in Nepal. That's very, very cool. Nepal is just one of the most staggering places you will ever visit. Having been lucky enough to spend a week or two up there during a bit of a trip around India, it really was absolutely beautiful. I don't recall seeing a Goliath heron, but I'm very happy that you were able to tick one off your Nepalese bird list. I'd be interested to know what else that you got there, or if you did indeed keep a list. But yeah, I don't see them all too often. I did see one at Babula in sort of November, December when I was up there doing some filming for Wild Earth. And occasionally we do bump into them in the Kruger. It seems there's around about 3 or 4 thousand in South Africa only, and about 1,000 or so in Mozambique, according to my slightly, I will admit, outdated statistics um, on my bird app that I'm using. Lily Mouse, you're asking, how do the boy and girl Goliath herons recognize each other? Um, a very good question, Lily Mouse, and it's something that many birds have to deal with. We take something like the rollers or the bee eaters, all beautiful colors in both sexes, so they don't rely on visual cues. Birds, some species do have a surprisingly good olfactory capability, so there may be something to do with pheromones, but I imagine it would rather be to do with the calls that they give out. Remember that our ears are designed for our purposes. Birds rely a huge amount on sound, particularly the passerines and the songbirds, and they are able to pick up a lot of sounds that we are not able to pick up. We may be able to hear them, but our primitive ears cannot hear all the different little subtle intricacies within those calls. Herons, of course, are not passerines, they're non-passerines. This is one using the other one's ear, playing a bit of hide and seek. So they're not well known for their vocalizations. So I imagine there would be something in that, maybe smell, maybe body posture. It's a good question, Lily Mass. I will have to see if I can find you anything specific in terms of research. Look at these two elephants having a bit of a play. Oh, beautiful. Look at the trunk scooped over the other one's forehead. Mutual scratching posts. Other one seems to be rather unperturbed and going to just have a nice quiet drink while these two frolic next to him. But I always love seeing these enormous bulls displaying some sort of fun tactile communication like that. Lovely to see that even these huge animals are capable of these little personal contacts and greetings and interactions. And Ellie, you're thanking me for being our host today. Well, I hope you enjoy it. Okay, we'll keep an eye on these three boys and see if we get any more interactions. They seem to have settled now. Quench that thirst. Let's head over to Rosie's pan quickly. I think we've got some more birding activity. Ah, lovely. The beautiful grey go-away bird sporting his headdress and a couple of what I assume to be the now known as Cape starlings, formerly known as glossy starlings, Cape glossy starlings, now just Cape starlings, which I've never fully understood. I understand the reasonings by it, but why would you take away the glossy part? Because that's such a characteristic aspect of their plumage. But regrettably, I'm not the one responsible for naming these birds. We also, of course, get the greater blue-eared starling. Very, very difficult to tell the two apart, even when looking at the descriptions. Ultimately, I will base it more on cool than anything else, and there is a slight difference in the sheen. One is more bluish, one is more greenish, but obviously you need nice sunlight to really see that, so I will always confirm with cool. But this go-away bird is having a lovely bath. You can see the way the feathers are still remaining relatively dry and unsaturated, thanks to that concoction of oils that is produced by the preen gland, or the uropygial gland, to give it its proper name, situated just above the tail. You'll often see the birds delving around in there with their beak and then wiping that secretion across their feathers. Acts as waterproofing, acts as an antibacterial, try and keep away some of those pesky parasites. Starlings are evading our zoomies. So these do look like glossy starlings. The greater blue-eared, as the name suggests, you can kind of see there's a blackish line that runs through the eye. It's a lot more prominent on the greater blue-eared starling. But I have to say, I have seen confirmed sightings of glossies, or Cape starling, I should call them now, where you can clearly see that black line as well. Catherine, you're also sharing my, I'd say irritation, frustration perhaps is a better word, of all these renamings of birds. They do the same for trees as well. And yes, we learn these names and then they change them again. Um, we've had this debate many times, but the reason they do it is just to try and standardize things. Every organism has its own scientific name, derived from the Latin and Greek, from the Linnaean system, the genus and species. That will always remain the same unless it gets changed due to some new genetic information. But the problem is common names are exactly that. They're common names and nobody sort of monitors them. So it's just to ensure that if I was doing research on that starling, I can phone somebody in Angola or Mozambique and say, oh, have you seen any of these birds recently? And if we all use the same common name, at least we know we're all on the same page. We've got a laughing dove, and we have a variety of grey-headed sparrows, and a few of another one of my favourites, the little blue waxbills. Beautiful little delicate creatures. Vijay Chaco, you're asking where this is. This is Rosie's Pan in Oliphant's West Game Reserve. So just a little bit further north of the town of Hoedspruit, which is where I am broadcasting to you from. And it is still a part of the Greater Kruger National Park. So it is formed some of the western boundary of the entire Transfrontier Park. Privately owned landowners in there, but all the other fences dropped so that the animals are free to roam between the other private reserves in the vicinity and into the national park should they so wish. The beautiful powder azure blue of the waxbill. Greetings to you, Spas, as well. I'm glad you can join us. And Penelope Kenyon, you're saying you've got the beautiful red-winged starlings in KZN. Yes, we also get those up here, but much bigger in terms of size, longer tail, and a darker, more metallic blue than the glossies, the Cape starlings, and the blue-eared starlings that we just mentioned. And yes, you can clearly see a little bit of that red when they're perched, but when they fly, you can see that red color. Mike, good question. You're asking where does the name Waxbill actually come from? I have to say, Mike, I wasn't sure off the top of my head, so I did just do a quick check. And it seems that it was originally from those species that have a very prominent red beak. So something like the common waxbill, for example, has a red beak, I believe. And it's was supposed to resemble the red of that the old wax that was used to seal letters. So that's sealing wax, not sealing as in roofs, sealing as in glue. The way like in olden times, documents and well, I suppose still now in some places today are used with a seal and a stamp. So that apparently is the origin of that name. First used apparently in 1757, the name waxbill. Philly Embu. I'm sorry if I've mispronounced your name. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that one. Apologies. Wanting to know whether sparrows migrate. Not to my knowledge, I don't know of any of the sparrow species that occur here in southern Africa that do migrate. There may be others in other parts of the world. Um, but the common ones that we see here, the Cape, the Great, the House, the grey-headed, all those sparrows, those are resident birds as far as I know. Lucy Hoodie, a pool party of birds. Yeah, lovely to see a nice diversity of species and this uh, grey go-away bird, the old grey lory, looking very proud on his perch after his bath, or hers. Another bird with no dimorphism. But very nice to spend some time with some of the smaller members of the bush. I did just have a quick look of after that question a little bit earlier about the monomorphic birds, so the starlings, the go-away birds, the herons, where there's no obvious visual difference to us in the plumage, and it seems there are a variety of suggestions, as I thought, behavioral displays, the slight vocal differences, chemical cues, possibly from that preen gland, little size differences, interactions between the two, hormonal changes. And something we should also mention is talked about how our ears are not designed for the avian world, with how important the sound is. Those sonograms of birds are actually far more complex than the sound that we hear. But also their visual acuity is far better than ours. Many of them see in ultraviolet spectrum, so they have an additional receptor in the retina, and they see far more specific shades of color and more different shades of color. There's the UV ability enables them to see things. So it is quite possible that even though to you and I, a male and a female of the same species may look identical, to the bird themselves, there may well be subtle differences that will just help them, alongside all those other suggestions that we just put forth, to recognize the different sexes. Ooh, having a good stretch of those rectrices, which are the tail feathers. A nice little scratch under the pectoral joins there, getting rid of any parasites and dust, and just making sure, particularly those flight feathers, are in good condition, all zipped up nicely, to try and make the whole exercise of flight as simple and as least energy expending as possible. Wild at Heart, you're saying that there was a wildcat sighting here at Rosie's Pan last night. That's very exciting. Not often you get to see an African wildcat. I did see one about 2 weeks ago in the Glaciere. I was doing a stargazing evening, one of the few clear nights we've had recently, on the airstrip. And just as we were packing up, we did a quick check with the spotlight, and there was a wildcat just sitting in the peripheries, watching us rather curiously, possibly hiding from the great hunting dogs of Orion. But no domestic cats up in the sky. There is a lynx. I think that's probably the closest I can think of off the top of my head to any feline suggestions. Ooh, that looked like a green-winged petilia, who just disappeared off to the left. Used to be known as the Melba finch. There it is. Oh, beautiful. Look at him. And that is the male. The female don't have that great reddish colour. Another one of my favourites. Interesting, everybody's coming in for a bath today. It's a bit late, I suppose. We also had some nice ones. Ah, there's the female at the back. I had some nice birds in the garden this morning. We had a cardinal woodpecker, and what I believe to be a lesser honey guide also came in for a bath. Maybe taking the opportunity for a cooler day. Yes, Nadine. So the one in the water with the big orange face is indeed the male, and the female you can see has the same coloration, that sort of olive green back, the barring across the belly, a little bit of red on the tail, but lacks the obvious markings on the face. We actually get two types of petilia, even in this area. These are the green-winged petilias, but there is also an orange-winged petilia, which I have never seen. But I do know somebody in the Hoedspruit area who did manage to see an orange-winged petilia at their bird bath. So not impossible to see, but they are more prominent in Mozambique and Zimbabwe. But look, very, very similar. The difference is the area around the face, sort of behind the eye, the area we call the ear coverts. In the orange-winged petilia, there's a lot more red behind the eye. Which is lacking in the green-winged petilia. You can see there the red kind of stops at the front of the eye. And they do have a sort of a slightly orangey wing panel as well, but I think it's very hard to actually make out in reality. But lovely to see. We don't get to have such a good view of these very often. Julian Thomas, you're also loving it when we always get to see, or try that sentence again, love it when we get to see all the smaller birds. I agree. It doesn't happen very often. Lily Mouse, you're saying yes, you think the difference in vision must be very important. Back to our discussion of identification in birds and how they need to know what they're dealing with long before they can smell them. Yep, absolutely. For birds, visual acuity is so important for finding food, for not flying into things. And they have a lot of interesting adaptations to enable that to be possible. They have something called a pecten, at the back of their eye attached to their retina. It's kind of a specialized organ that just feeds more oxygenated blood to the eye to make it more efficient. And you can actually do a little test yourself to see where where we miss a pectin, where it would help. If you are in somewhere relatively dark and you make a little aperture with your thumb and your forefinger, hold it in front of your eye and shake it sort of left and right against a brighter background. So basically, your eye is going dark light, dark light, dark light. You will start to see some sort of strange colors and shapes. It's just difficult for the eye to keep up with all that changing. Oh wow, from the small to the large, all of the changing light, the muscles in the eye and the receptors can't quite keep up with it. And if you think if you're a bird flying through heavily vegetated areas, you're going through dappled light, coming through all the leaves. Very, very important that you don't have any problems with your vision. Young Mr. Elephant, wonderful to see you, but you've scattered a lot of beautiful birds we were looking at. They will have to wait their turn or find an alternative vantage point from which to enjoy their bath. And good afternoon, Brian. I'm glad you're also able to join us. You've missed a treat so far, Brian. If you have just joined us, we've had some lovely little passerines, green-winged petillias and waxbills and starlings and go-away birds, a Goliath heron briefly, and some illies. Are you part of a herd, young elephant, or are you just wandering around? Having a little investigation of what I assume is a little rock sticking up there. Wonder if something's sitting on it with an interesting smell. Maybe some nice minerals that have collected there after water has evaporated. Some salts and phosphates, all things that are important for a big growing elephant. But interesting to see so much bird activity on a cooler, overcast day. You expect to see a lot fewer birds. Perhaps just coming down en masse, bit of safety in numbers to their slightly later than normal ablutions. a sniff of the surrounding area. It seems the cameras are playing up a little bit today, so we've come all the way down to Stony Point and enjoy the rustling fur of a Dussie, who is very much enjoying the rays of the sunshine. Looks like a little bit more there than there is here in the Lowfelt. Nice sea breeze. Get the impression he's sort of arcing his whole head to try and get as close as possible to the sun and enjoy the warmth. Or has possibly had an argument with the one at the back and is giving it the cold shoulder. We rarely see them particularly active here. There we go. Roll over. Oh, big stretch. Look at those only 3-toed feet that they've got. Time to warm up the belly. I was at Velgefunden a little while ago at the game reserve there and got to see quite a few of them scampering around in the trees, foraging on the vegetation. It was nice to see them a little bit more active and actually see them clambering around on the trees. Surprisingly agile, considering they are fairly... Well, they're not designed for agility, let's put it that way. Ooh, Dark Main Lover, that's a contentious question. What reserves still practice the culling of elephants and other animals? When it comes to elephants, Dark Main Lover, I honestly don't know. I don't know of any off the top of my head that do still cull elephants. I have heard reports over the years of reserves that will, they will occasionally remove individuals, but I think culling is certainly not practiced that often, or not very openly these days, at least. But many other places do have to cull animals. It's something we've said quite a few times before, and whether you like it or you disagree with it, it doesn't change the fact that if you're going to put a fence around an area to protect those animals, it has to be said, but you cannot then let those populations run rife with no controlling mechanism. Otherwise they will eat everything and ultimately they will all die and the vegetation will get hammered and it won't be able to sustain any wildlife whatsoever. So general game getting out of control occasionally does need to be controlled. Little penguin, I still hope sitting on a nest in there. We will watch with careful investigatory eyes. But it sounds like we may have some feeding vultures up in Zim. Let's quickly head up there. Okay, Big Falls Safari Lodge with their sky camera. We've obviously had their daily food deposited for them. You can see the chaos that is a feeding frenzy of different species of vulture. They'll be mostly white-backed, and I see a variety of hooded there. Hopefully there's some capes thrown in there. I don't see any marabou storks, but they're normally hanging around. Oh, there's, I think, possibly one at the back just waiting its turn. The strong, long claws and feet that they've got. Very, very agile on the ground. And they're always amusing when they've had a massive meal to watch them attempt to take off. They do need a little bit of a runway to get that bulk up into the sky. Very, very strong birds. Captain, you're asking what are they feeding on? Well, I couldn't tell you now. I think whatever it was is long gone, but this is what we call a vulture restaurant. So vultures are, all species of vultures are critically endangered these days. So there are lots of conservation initiatives in this particular area, as I understand it. Any sort of offcuts from the restaurants and things that are not being used, any meat and bones that would otherwise be thrown away are given to the vultures relatively regularly to ensure that they can find sufficient sustenance. So I couldn't tell you what specific meat it is. It's probably a lot of beef, I would think, in there, and whatever else that is being used locally. Picasso, you're asking about the Dassie or the Hyrax's feet, and so is it similar to the elephants in terms of the nails and things that they have? Well, I mentioned the three toes that they have on their back feet that we could see clearly. They do have four toes on their front feet and just three on the back. So I'm assuming that they all will have toenails and little claws as well. So I suppose, yes, similar to elephants in that regard. Of course, they are quite closely related or share similar characteristics with regard to their foot structure, that um, not quite a near ungulate status. They have something in between the ungulates and the plantigrade things, so things that walk on the entire soles of their feet. The forward growing incisors, internal testes, they do share a surprising number of characteristics, hyraxes and elephants. Sparse, in terms of how water dependent the vultures are, I can't really equate it to anything or substantiate it, but they are water dependent in terms of that you will always see them after a big meal. They will go and drink water at the local water source. They will also bathe, and they are quite fastidious. They have a reputation of being, rather unpleasant, dirty animals, but they are surprisingly clean. They do like to clean themselves off after they've been rooting around in a fetid carcass. They certainly do require some water. I'm sure it just helps with the breakdown of the food in their stomach that they have consumed. But I wouldn't be able to tell you how often they are required to drink. I'm sure, like often, it will have a lot to do with the specific circumstances, the ambient temperature, whether they've eaten or not, the time of year, etc., etc. How much was it an old carcass which is sort of relatively dried out, or was it still very fresh? Because they will get some moisture from any blood content that they are also consuming. So there'll be lots and lots of variables. But it looks like that might be that for feeding. You see many of them now riding the thermals, going off exploring. Very grateful for their meal, I'm sure. It sounds like we've got some more bird activity down at Tembe. Ah, we have a woolly-necked stork down at Tembe. And VMBoo, you were asking what animals were we looking at? I assume you meant up there at Victoria Falls. So they were a mixture of predominantly white-backed vultures and the smaller ones being the hooded vultures. There possibly was a Cape vulture in there as well. I didn't see any of the lappet or the white-headed vultures. Not 100% sure if their distribution would find them there, but I wouldn't be surprised. But this is not a vulture. So this is a woolly-necked stork. Penelope Kenyon, you've obviously been keeping a close eye on these cameras. You said that there was a lioness here at Tembe very early this morning. Well, it's a good day potentially for a cat to rock up unexpectedly today. It's relatively cool and overcast conditions, so a greater chance that those nocturnal predators are out and about today. So we will cross fingers that maybe she returns. So it's Willie next stork casting a bit of a lonely figure in the foreground, a few impalas in the background, which Penelope Kenyon, you said, unsurprisingly scattered this morning when the lioness arrived. Of course, we're beginning to come into the rutting season now. That's normally April to May. I have heard a few impalas beginning to rut, to create that rather unexpectedly loud and almost predator-like sound that the males make when they're chasing each other around. These sort of grunts and growls that they produce, and the snorting that goes along with it. That behavioural change will be in response to the hormonal changes in their body, which will also come about by the animal picking up unconsciously or subconsciously on environmental cues such as ambient temperature and particularly the length of day. Now the days are beginning to get shorter as we move into autumn. The animal's pineal gland in its sort of in its brain will be picking up on this and causing the appropriate hormonal changes, the body chemistry changes, and that then promotes that behavior. Okay, well, this elephant seems insistent upon playing hide and seek with us. I think let's go out to Kenya to Lentoro, where we have our troop of baboons. Always good entertainment. The one on the left decided it's all a bit too much. No, you're going to be harassed. I think that one just got disciplined a little bit, doing things perhaps he was a little young for just now. Little conversation about the birds and the bees. Ellie, you're hoping to see that little baby baboon. Yes, we saw one a couple of days ago. Still very, very young, very black, with the pink, sort of almost fluorescent pink ears that they've got at that age. I think this is actually two boys. I thought maybe that was mum dishing out discipline, but I think this is two boys with a little bit of enthusiasm this morning. He's examining his reflection. Helga Brandt, yes, saying they're sitting around like they're having a meeting. What they're discussing. Will we go today to forage? What will our plans be? Which lovely tree will we choose to roost in tonight? If only we knew what these animals were actually saying and thinking and communicating to each other. Whole other world. Looked like one was just having a bit of a doze in the crook of that tree. This must be like a day out of the beach for the baboons. The big male patrolling in the background. Oh, there's the little one. Little one attached to Mum's stomach there in the background. You can see those bright pink ears. Milk bar is open. Well, there you go, Ellie. There is your little one, still going strong. Well, I don't know how old this little one is, but can't be more than a week or two. Come on, come this way. Huge ears. Hey, they obviously grow into their ears. Captain, do baboons get along with monkeys? I've never seen any sort of specific aggressive interactions between vervets and baboons. Sometimes they'll be foraging in the same place. I imagine they'll both sort of keep to themselves so long as there isn't too much competition for the food resource that's available. I highly doubt they would share the same tree to sleep in at night. I've never seen that. There are enough trees to choose from, I think. So I think as long as everybody respects each other and there's enough of whatever it is that's attracted them to that particular area, then they should be fine. If there would be any competition between the two of them, I think the baboon would win hands down. The monkey has got speed on its size, but yeah, don't mess with the baboon. Hugely strong, disproportionately strong. And so we all know those massive teeth, which can inflict a very, very nasty bite if needs be. Lily Mouse, you're saying sounds like a cuckoo. For some reason, I don't seem to be getting any ambient sounds today, unfortunately, so I'm unable to substantiate your claim. Um, but it would be nice if it was a cuckoo, certainly. But unfortunately, I've just got picture today. I'm not sure. I must have a little tech bug in my system somewhere. Nadine, I don't know if you can hear it, if you could possibly try and whistle it or do an impression in my ear, maybe I can assist. Uh, well, what Nadine has just done in my ear, I can't really help you, I'm afraid. We'll see if we can get something a little bit more concrete from her. I know we hear the morning, possibly you were doing a morning dove there, Nadine. I'm not sure. I know we hear those quite often here. I wish you could all hear what Nadine is doing in my ear. Um, as a very generalized guess, but I have to say not much information to work on. I'm going to say it sounds like a mourning dove just because I know we do hear those an awful lot at Leb Toro, but I'm afraid I can't confirm or deny Lady Mouse. I hope you heard a cuckoo because there are lots of different cuckoos, all with lovely calls, many of which will be departing this area soon as we move into April. The migratory birds will soon be departing. In fact, I stand to be corrected as always, but I think the only cuckoo that remains in South Africa, at least over the winter period, is the Class's cuckoo. And then it is silent. It doesn't call at all. Non-breeding season doesn't draw attention to itself, but all the other ones, as far as I know, disappear. They're all intra-African migrants moving a little further north. Well, Nadine, it's improving. It's beginning to sound at least a little bit more like a bird now. But yeah, I'm going to go with mourning dove. Yes, exactly. The only cuckoo who's left in South Africa is you, Nadine. Shame, sad but true. I'm going to try and recreate it, and you can tell me. So it's more like a. Does that sound about right? Sorry, everybody, whilst Nadine and I try and decipher this. Lily Mouse, yes. So maybe it's a dove, but very difficult for me without actually hearing it, unfortunately. Maybe if you can, do a quick online search for African mourning dove and see if you can find a recording of the call and see if you can double check it for yourself. Julian Thomas, you think I might be right? An African mourning dove, very different species to the mourning dove of the USA and Canada. Yes, I would imagine so, probably with its own distinct language. Ah, I don't know what the clever thing that the calculator does, or what I've done. One of them running especially concentrated. seem to have lost sound again. Never mind. We'll assume mourning dove until proven otherwise. Things seem to have settled down now amongst the troop. Deb Davis, you say you've done a quick check and agree that American and mourning doves are not related, which you say is strange because they look similar. I'm afraid I don't know what the American mourning dove does look like. I will have a little look. Yeah, more research needed, as you say. Well, of course, there's a lot of new research that's constantly coming out uh, regarding different species and things being subdivided into subspecies and things that we didn't think were different that actually are based on genetic testing. So we live in an interesting world now where we're finding out all these little subtle differences between things which we did not know existed. We didn't have the ability to look at it in such detail. This little one currying some favour with one of the adults, a little groom. Blizzard King, you all hope they'll go for a swim. That would be nice to see. I've seen them sort of wading across channels of water, but not really having a full-on swim. Although here we saw some banded mongoose having a bit of a swim a few weeks back. That was interesting, something I've never seen before. Okay, well, I think this is some lovely time spent with the baboons at Lentor. I think let's go a little further south to Botswana to Elephant Pan and seeing if it is living up to its name. Ah, hello, big boy. What have you found in between the tree trunks there? out. This elephant looks as if he's having a very, very chilled afternoon now. Hasn't done much movement, picked himself a nice shady spot. He's had a good drink, had a little bit of a scratch, and possibly going to consider just having a little bit of a standing snooze, which elephants are known for. Oh, of course, now I've said that, he's decided to wander off. Earth lover, you are saying that Asma, who is 9 years old, wants to know why the baby baboon, I assume we're talking about, looks like it was sticking its finger near the bottom of one of the bigger ones. Asma the baboon was grooming, so the youngster was uh, trying to sort of curry a little bit of favour with the adult, just keep on good terms with him. Remember, in something like baboons, which are a very social group of animals, there's a lot of communication between them. They live together as a community, and one of the ways that they form that relationship is by cleaning one another, so removing any little parasites, fleas and ticks, and anything else that might be living in the skin. And they will remove it with their very dexterous fingers, just like we have. Often they will even eat them. There's a little bit of protein to be had there, but generally it's just cleaning each other. You see it between many members of the groups. Lots of social animals, monkeys will do it, the great apes will do it. We even see it sometimes in other animals. Impalas are well known to groom one another. Yeah, after I said the elephant looks as if he was beginning to sort of camp down for an afternoon of relaxation, he decided to wander off. You've got to love nature, as I'm sure we all do. That's why we are here enjoying this. Even though we're not seeing anything specific, still beautiful views, and amazing to think just how much life and how many organisms are hiding in that thick belt of Mopani on the other side of the pan. I see various people are asking me if my full name is Benjamin or just Ben. Oh, there's a giraffe, multiple giraffe, in fact. Officially, as per birth certificate, I am a Benjamin, but I don't often go by Benjamin. That's normally reserved for certainly when I was younger, when I was naughty and my parents needed to shout at me, then I very swiftly became a Benjamin. But generally, Ben is fine, although I have no problem with Benjamin. I didn't used to like the full name, but I think I have no problem with Benjamin these days. 3 syllables is maybe a bit too much. This one having a bit of a scratch on the tree limb. Picasso, you're saying that you've noticed that impalas' pupils dilate when using the infrared camera, and do baboons do the same? As I understand your question, you're saying that they are bigger. I assume you mean that when they look at the camera when it's in IR, you can see that the pupils are much larger and they'll be reflecting back white. Well, that's just because the infrared light doesn't actually shed any visual light into their eyes, which means the pupils don't have to dilate in order to try and restrict the amount of information that is coming in to the retina and the optic nerve. So we see it with all animals at night time. Through the IR camera, you'll see that their pupils are dilated much larger, much bigger, because they are trying to um, get in every last available amount of light that they can so that they can see. And therefore, I assume that the baboon pupils would do the same thing. But I don't think I've ever actually seen baboons in infrared light because they are normally sleeping up in the trees. They're not very active, so we don't normally get an opportunity to shine the IR light and the infrared camera on baboons. But I would assume if the baboons were active at night time, we would also see their pupils very dilated to capture what little light there is. Obviously, on a cloudy night or a moonless night, their pupils are likely to be larger than if there is a full moon, because that does produce quite a lot of light on its own. You're going to come and have a drink, young man, with your oxpeckers. It's sinking into the mud. It doesn't look like the cleanest water, but you're not going to see the giraffe wade out into the middle of the dam. Yes, Captain, nice to see a big group of giraffe like this. We've got 6 or 7 members there. All look like males. If we look at the ossicones, you can see the balding spots on the top of those cranial protrusions. Possibly, if is that a female at the back, maybe just wandering off. Very loose social structure, of course. Giraffe. I heard it described the other day as a fusion fission or a fission fusion relationship or structure, which I haven't heard before, but we generally go with the slightly more simplistic temporary associations, whereby there is no strict rule and that they immigrate and emigrate as a group, sometimes together, sometimes on their own, but not unusual to see either individual bulls, or groups of females with young. These two in the middle now certainly do look like youngsters, so whether there is a mum around somewhere. But we also can never quite tell because they do spread out, even if they are together as a group, and they'll keep in contact because they can see over a lot of the tree line. So a structure may be a little bit more substantial than perhaps we realize because we can't see the other members. Stephen Boyd, you're saying it's absolutely beautiful to see these giraffe. I agree. Such incredible animals, unique in their physiology. So many interesting adaptations they have, elasticated veins to stop blood pooling and one-way valves in their jugulars to stop blood flowing into the brain when they bend down to drink. Ridiculously large heart, in excess of 10 kilograms. Very, very heavy because of the extra muscle needed in that left ventricle to pump the blood up that long neck. Can be up to about 7 centimeters thick, so more than double the human heart. But when your average blood pressure is 280 over 180 or thereabouts, you need a fairly substantial muscle to facilitate that movement of the blood around that strangely proportioned body. It's something inherently beautiful, and I always call it an awkward grace watching giraffes. They look so uncoordinated, yet pull off this beauty at the same time. Very elegant animals. Spuss, how good is their eyesight? Again, I wouldn't know how to equate it, and I don't know officially, but they do have very large eyes if you look at the size of their eyes compared to their head. Um, and they are quite reliant upon vision. So I would think a lot better than ours. I'm not sure if they have bichromatic or trichromatic vision like we do with the red, green, and blue receptors. Many animals don't have the red receptor in their eyes, so see a slightly different spectrum than we do. But I don't know an official sort of statistic or how to relate how good their eyesight is, but we see them getting distracted by things a lot sooner, well, from great distances, and we will often look at a giraffe and look at what it's looking at to find something. They do stare at predators. This one's obviously seen a bit of movement, perhaps, or something has attracted its attention, particularly when they come down to drink because of the very vulnerable pose that they have to adopt. I'll see if I can find out anything specific for you, Spuss, but just based on the size of the eye, um, I would think a lot better than ours, certainly. Right, for interest's sake, Spuss, I did just do a quick check. And yes, they are dichromatic animals, i.e., they just see the blues and the greens and don't see reds very well. They have good light vision, more rods than we do. They have that reflective layer at the back of their eyes, that tapetum lucidum as well for reflecting any light back. So the optic nerve has a couple of chances to pick it up. So excellent vision, but again, difficult to give you a sort of a specific figure on it. Okay, beautiful to spend some time with some giraffe. Don't often see giraffe here at Elephant Pan. We are going to go somewhere. I didn't quite pick up where we have some wildebeest. Let's go have a look. Ah, up at Hwangi in Zimbabwe. Oh, wow. We've got some wildebeest and we have some crowned cranes. First time I've seen these on any of the cameras. That's very nice to see. I remember seeing some of these up in Tanzania, I think, whether it was the same species or not, but never seen any crowned cranes in South Africa, I don't think. Dredged through nearly 20 years of looking at birds, but I don't remember seeing any down here. Amazing little headdresses that they've got. The closest thing we've got to something like that is a crested guinea fowl. Yes, crested guinea fowl, which are also highly entertaining to look at. So these crayons are omnivorous. They'll eat grass seeds, they'll eat some leaves, also invertebrates. They'll feed on frogs, lizards, small rodents, all sorts of different things, a variety of insects as well, and even things like millipedes, apparently. But really beautiful markings. See that lovely little red wattle underneath the throat. Really spectacular markings. Ellie, you're agreeing with me that these are very beautiful birdies. Yeah, they are indeed. They're lovely different colours. They almost remind me a little bit of wild dogs with blacks and browns and whites and fawn, tan, tawny colours. Helga Brandt also saying these birds have such vivid, stunning plumages. I think really nice to see that little red wattle stands out very obviously as well. But yeah, first time I've ever seen them on any of the cameras that we use here. Very nice to see. Was well known for their courtship behaviour at the appropriate time of year. They're well known for doing that special dance where they bob their heads up and down and then they bow and then they leap into the air with their wings spread and their legs sort of hanging down. I've seen footage of it, never seen it in person, but always fun to see the birds doing their little courtship displays. I would imagine we're pretty much out of breeding season now. They are monogamous, to my knowledge. They will pair up during the breeding season, but now we are coming to the end of summer. Autumn is upon us. And since there is no specific breeding behaviour to be done, then it makes sense to stay together as a group and take advantage of safety in numbers. Wild at Heart, just thanking Nadine. For those of you who are not following on all the specifics, Nadine has left the building, or at least left my ear, to be replaced with the lovely Mika. She is now looking after us all. Catherine, you say they remind you of a peacock. They do, indeed. They do look rather peacock-like with that headdress. And there is a constellation named after a crane as well. Grus, the crane, a southern hemisphere constellation, as well as a peacock, Pavo the peacock. Quite a few birds up in the sky, a bird of paradise, various eagles and swans, and I'm sure there are some others that if I stop to think about it for a moment, as well as quite a few fish up there, flying fish and a dorado and a few other aquatic things. Lady Macbeth, you say you've never seen a crested guinea fowl on the cameras? No, neither have I. But as you said, they would be at Tenby. Here in the Lowveld, we don't really get them. If you go up to the Pafuri region, though, or Punda Maria and north, they do occur right up in the north of Kruger. I've seen them up there on a few occasions. I once saw one in the Sabi Sands, just one, must have got horribly, horribly lost. Hung around for 3 or 4 days and then never to be seen again. But yes, down in Tenby, we should see them. Maybe one day we'll be graced with their presence on the camera. Okay, well, that was very special, though. First grey-crowned cranes for me on the cameras here. But let's leave the cranes for now and head up to Oldonyo. I think we have some more giraffe. Oh, well, look at that. Gorgeous light on these giraffe and some rain clouds in the background. Very dramatic, beautiful scene. Look at that lovely soft glow that these giraffe have got. You see the rain falling as well. Very quintessential Africa. Brian, back to the cranes. You're asking how do you tell the difference between male and female? Brian, again, as far as I know, they are there's no dimorphism. They are uh, monomorphistic, monomorphs, whatever the right terminology is. No difference visually to us, at least, between males and females. So again, for them, probably down to little intricacies in the plumage that we do not pick up, things reflecting under UV light that the birds will be able to see that we will not, and then behavioral and calls and sort of body language and behavior will all play their roles. Julian Thomas also saying how stunning those cranes were. This, of course, is the Maasai giraffe, whereas down at Elephant Pan we were looking at the Southern African giraffe. You can see the difference in the patterning of the coat, a lot more jagged and close together, these patches of the darker orange. I was actually looking or trying to find a bit more information on specifically Maasai giraffe because I know I've said in the past that when I worked in Tanzania we saw so many of them, but they are currently listed as endangered by the IUCN and on the red list due to the standard problems, habitat loss and poaching and human wildlife conflict. estimated to be around about 35,000 left in the wild. But so some figures suggesting that the population has declined by about 50% in the last 30 years, which is indeed very worrying. Speaking of unusual things that are endangered, I saw recently we've got a new problem here in South Africa with a particular type of clivia plant, which is kind of like a bit like a lily, that grows only in the western side of the country. Most lilies prefer more moist, sort of, I wouldn't say swampy areas, but certainly wetter areas. So we do get various species that occur here in the Lowveld. But there is one species called the miracle clivia that is found in the western side of the country in the Northern Cape in a very, very specific region. And there have been multiple cases of poaching. Remember, poaching can refer to the removal of any natural resource. It doesn't have to be an animal. And unfortunately, there is a big trade for exotic and unusual plants as well. There have been over 40 or 50 arrests made in light of this sort of new poaching racket that they've discovered. Over 4,000 of these plants confiscated since, I think, well, in the last year or so. But just a reminder that poaching affects other things, not just animals, and not just the big mainstream animals at that. Quite a few of you commenting on the beautiful backdrop, the dark clouds and the rain falling. Penelope Kenyon says, wow, look at the rain. Ellie, another wow, with pointing out the lovely shower in the background. Dark Main Lovey also enjoying the sightings, their beautiful lights. And this one in particular, when he had his head side on to us, we were seeing more of the profiles. Stunning markings around the face, this boy. And Lily Mouse, I'm glad you're enjoying the show. Yeah, beautiful animals, some lovely sunshine, some dramatic backdrops. Very, very nice. And so a real treat to see those cranes. And I really enjoyed that little party of passerines as well at the beginning. Little petilias. Wow, I'm going with all the P's. The petilias and the waxbills and the starlings. So not unexpected this time of year up in this area of Kenya. The long rains generally run from March to May, and April is normally the wettest month. April showers, I suppose. And the shorter rains at the end of the year, October to December. Richard B, you're commenting on those umbrella thorns or the flat-topped acacia trees in the background, the FNB trees, as you called them. Yeah, it's the logo of First National Bank, one of the main banks here in South Africa. Ooh, what have we got there? Some little widers. Look like pin-tailed widers. Those beautiful long streaming tail feathers. Amidst some laughing doves. looks like a little wood dove at the bottom left, emerald spotted wood dove and ring-neck doves at the top. But I think let's zoom all the way from Kenya down to the Eastern Cape to Mantis Founders Lodge. And we have some zebbies. It's rather stoic. Zebras just contemplating life by the looks of it. Nice breeze whistling through the trees in the back, also cloudy skies. So very much the way of it over a lot of the country today. I've had to postpone the stargazing evening this evening and move it to tomorrow, where the forecast suggests it should be a little bit better. So this is just a little cold front passing over southern Africa, it seems. So I should be crossing my fingers for better conditions tomorrow. Oh, and don't forget, all of you in the Northern Hemisphere, 29th is the partial solar eclipse. How partial it will be, of course, will be dependent upon your latitude. Recently found out, actually, that in Maasai star lore, the Southern Cross was seen as a celestial zebra. We have it as a giraffe down here in a variety of African cultural star lore, and lions were seen in the Southern Cross by Bushmen, but it seems in East Africa the Southern Cross represented a zebra that guided some lost travellers to water at one point, and is seen as very much a guiding influence. Still, you can see it from Kenya and Tanzania. It's a nice indicator of south, certainly. Always nice to find out new stories, particularly when ancient civilizations saw animals in the night sky. Looking very contemplative today. Ooh, something attracted his attention. Even when these animals look as if they're fast asleep, they are still hyper aware to noises around them. Difficult to sex these two from this angle. I would say the one at the back, I'm pretty convinced, is a male. Just looking at the stripe pattern, looks a little bit more contrasty, which you often find in the males, but only one way to be sure, and we need a slightly better view to be able to clarify one way or the other. Lovely open scenery of the Eastern Cape. I spent a little bit of time down there towards the end of last year and was very different from the Lowveldt, so a lot more open. You can pretty much just park off in one spot, take your binoculars and scan around and count 4, 5, 6, 7 different species of mammals that were visible. Remember some of the guides saying, I don't know how you can guide in the low velds when it's so heavily vegetated in areas. And I was saying the same thing. How do you guide here? It's so open. Okay, well, a quick scan around. Not much else happening here at Mantis Founders Lodge. So just some more stoic zebras. So let's go to Cat-Eye Pan back up in the low felt. I think we've got some elephants. Okay, well maybe we'll stay here a little bit longer. Ah, there we go. Cat-Eye Pan and the... So we may have just missed the elephants having a drink, just a small herd. There's bull at the back. Big slice taken out of that left ear. You can see the colour change in the grass. And only a few weeks ago, this would have all been lush and green. Everything now turning orangey brown in response to the changing seasons. Okay, well, it seems our Eddies didn't want to hang around. That's a shame. Well, let's go back up and enjoy our baboons at Lentor in Kenya. Two on the right look as if they're hiding from each other behind the tree. Thank you, Joanne Mello. I'm glad you can join us. Wishing us all a happy Thursday to follow. I also echo these sentiments to you all. We've still got about 10 minutes to go, but Joanne, if you have to leave us, I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm sure you'll be back with us again in the future. We will, of course, be doing this again tomorrow, 12:30 till 2:30 Southern African time. Hopefully catch up with that rather cute little youngster baboon again. sure what that one at the back has got. It's fiddling around with something. I worry that, but hope it is not some sort of human debris, but it's certainly a possibility. It does make me very angry. While driving around Kruger and you see people just throwing things out of the windows. This horrific disrespect for those beautiful natural areas. Please take the time to put things in bins or put them in your pocket or chuck them on the seat of your car and dispose of them a little bit later. It doesn't take much. So really enjoying just watching the shadows, particularly when they, well, not the shadows, the reflection, sorry, when they walk. I've seen quite a few rather pretty photos like that where people take a beautiful reflection and then invert the photograph. Ashma, if you are still watching when you were asking earlier why the baboons were sort of poking around, you can see the two at the back. That one also getting a little bit of the groom. Remember that is the area that they spend most of the time in contact with the ground with when they are sitting. So more likely to pick up little parasites and ticks and things in that area, and quite difficult to see what you're doing to clean yourself. A lot of exposed skin there as well, which makes it a lot easier for things like ticks to attach to. Often always need to take careful care of areas anywhere where it's sort of a little bit protected as well. The armpits, the groin, in between your toes. That's a favourite of pepper ticks. I've picked out many a pepper tick from in between my toes when I rather stupidly went through a phase of doing bushwalks in a pair of open-toed sandals. That became part of the routine. In the evening, sit there with a knife and just remove all the little tiny black specks in between the toes where the pepper ticks had taken up residence. So a lot more prevalent during the summer months. Again, one of the benefits of winter. A lot less ticks. Right, well, it seems the baboons didn't want to hang around for the end of the show, so I think let's head down to Maputaland and to Tembe Elephant Park for the last couple of minutes and see what we get down there. Ah, some Inyalas and some Impalas. Very pretty. I love those male Nyalas. Didn't see any of them doing their little dance this summer, which is a shame. If you've never seen it, when two males are having a little bit of a dominance battle, they very, very, very rarely actually clash horns and come to blows. They rather do this almost comical stiff-legged slow motion walk. All that hair that looks a bit like a mane running down their neck and their back stands erect, and they walk these slow motion circles around one another with their head held very, very low, strangely as well. And somehow in that exchange, dominance is established. I know if you watch the live safaris, you might have seen James doing a couple of impressions. He's quite adept at a male Inyala little prance. Maybe we'll be lucky enough in the future to see it again. Wildlife Lady, I'm sorry you joined us late, but I'm glad you've enjoyed what you've seen on today's Live at the Waterhole. You are very welcome. Thanking myself, FC, and all the Zoomies for their help. We've seen some lovely things today. I particularly enjoyed our little birding forays today, seeing the petilias and the sparrows, and particularly those grey-crowned cranes in Hwangi. I think that was probably the highlight for me today, and that little tiny baby baboon at Lentor. But we're down to the last minute, so a couple of last goodbyes. Ellie, glad you could join us, and thanks for your questions and comments. We will see you next time. Catherine, also, thank you to you as well. Enjoy the rest of your day. Penelope Kenyon, again, hope you've all enjoyed the show. But we'll be back again tomorrow. I will be back again tomorrow, 12:30 my time at least. And we will see what other delights these cameras throw up for us. But don't forget to join the live drives later this evening. Catch up with all your favourite characters and favourite naturalists, and let's hope we see some other spectacular things. But I leave you with these last views of the Inyala and Impala at Tembe. Have a wonderful Thursday, everyone.